The piano at Aurelio's didn't so much play as breathe. Smoke-soft notes, a slow river of sound slipping through the low-lit room. Amber liquor glowed in cut glass. Waiters moved like chess pieces. A storm pressed against the windows, smearing Chicago in rain and neon. At a back table, Giovanni Rossi signed a contract with a fountain pen older than some of the men guarding the door. The signature was clean, ruthless, inevitable. Like everything he did. He saw her before she saw him. She threaded through the crowd with a steady, stubborn grace, a woman in a black dress that didn't shout but understood perfectly how to be seen. Brown hair swept into a simple twist, a few rebellious strands catching light, a mouth that looked like it had learned to hold back what it wanted to say, eyes the color of old whiskey, bright when they should have been tired. She walked like someone teaching herself to be brave in real time. She stopped at his table. "I'm sorry," she whispered, breath trembling. "Could you dance with me? My ex is watching from the bar." The room sharpened. People rarely asked Giovanni for favors without knowing who he was. People never asked him for gentle things. He followed the line of her gaze to the marble-topped bar. A man in a navy suit leaned on an elbow that didn't quite belong to him, a smile carved with entitlement, eyes mean with memory. The kind of man who mistook proximity for possession. Giovanni lifted his gaze back to the woman. Up close, those brave eyes were glassy, with the effort not to cry. A thin, livid mark peeked above the bone of her wrist, hastily covered by makeup, the kind of mark you don't get from a door frame. "What's your name?" Giovanni asked. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah Johnson." He rose without another question. "Then let's give him something worth watching." She blinked, relief and panic colliding. His palm found the small of her back, light, instructive, the way you might place a hand on a skittish horse, asking for trust instead of taking it. The pianist looked up as if he too understood when a moment needed soft witness, and slid into a slow, elegant standard that cupped the room in velvet. They stepped onto the small floor between tables. He guided. She followed. Not because she couldn't lead herself, but because for once it felt good to rest. The rain beat a hush against the windows. The city leaned in. Sarah's pulse thundered. Giovanni smelled warm cedar and rain off his suit, the kind of careful masculinity that came with knives you never saw unsheathed. "I don't know how to do this," she murmured. "You already are," he said, voice a glass-smooth baritone. "One step at a time." He moved like he was born to cut circles in crowded rooms. His hand warmed the line of her spine. She let her head tilt, not quite to his shoulder, but near enough that she could hear how even his breathing stayed. Her ex shifted at the bar. The glass in his hand tipped, then steadied. Anger is a loud color, and Giovanni saw it bloom behind the other man's eyes. Is he the kind who apologizes to the glass after he hits it? Giovanni asked, almost lazily, like he wasn't already calculating all the ways this could go wrong and how to stop each one. Sarah's throat tightened. "He's the kind who thinks people are furniture," she said, surprising herself. There it was. The truth. The air tasted better after. "We worked together. I ended it. He didn't." Giovanni's jaw flexed, the smallest tick. "Look at me," he said. She did. Those eyes, dark, calm, terrible with patience, held hers like shore holds tide. The song swelled. They turned. Her heartbeat changed its reason for being fast. "You're safe for the length of this song," he said. "Probably longer." She huffed something like a laugh, something like a sob. "Probably? I try not to make promises I won't enjoy keeping." By the second chorus, people watched them the way you watch a fire in a fireplace you didn't know you needed. The ex's smile devolved. He pushed off the bar. "Don't look," Giovanni said, seeing everything without moving. "Tell me what you do, Sarah." "I restore art," she said, and suddenly her voice filled with a softness that belonged to her. "Watercolor mostly. Pieces that time has smudged. I bring back what was meant to be seen." Of course she did. He pictured her hands with brushes gentle as breath. He'd been raised in marble and iron, cathedrals and cellars, and he knew the quiet holiness of returning a thing to itself. "You?" she asked, then flushed, because what did you ask a stranger whose body said danger and whose palm said home? I sign my name, he said, mouth curving with a private joke. And I keep the people I sign for in one piece. Security? She tried, in a manner of speaking. The song ended. The room clapped like it had been waiting to exhale. The ex arrived with a smile held together by liquor and habit. Sarah, he said, syrup thick, didn't think you liked to perform. I wasn't performing, she said, surprising herself twice in one night. I was dancing. Same thing, he said, then turned an up-down glance on Giovanni that confused price with value. And you are? Leaving, Giovanni said pleasantly, and then, with a softness that felt like closing doors, he tucked Sarah under his arm. Come with me. He didn't look back, but two men who had been invisible up to that moment unfolded from shadows and stepped into the ex's path with courteous, immovable smiles. They slid into a side hallway where framed black and white photographs made time feel like an art project. Sarah's breath fogged. The world had moved too fast. The world had not moved fast enough. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have. You did exactly what you should, Giovanni said. You asked for help. Her eyes shone. Do you make a habit of rescuing strangers? No, he said. I make habits out of excellent things. I suspect you'll ruin me for all of them. She didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know what to do with the realization that standing close to a dangerous man had never felt less dangerous. You're shaking, he said gently. I'm angry, she corrected. Good. Anger tells the truth about what hurt. A waitress appeared with 2 flutes of champagne as if delivered by the universe itself. Giovanni lifted one. To dancing when you should have run. She reached for hers. Their fingers brushed. Her throat warmed. To running when you should have stayed, she countered, surprising herself for the 3rd time. He laughed then, quiet and real. Sarah Johnson, he said, tasting her name like something he meant to remember. Tell me where you live. I'll have a car take you home. I can call a cab. He lifted a brow. You could, he said, and I could let the weather decide what happens next. She hesitated. I have work tomorrow. A piece from a private collection, late 19th century, water damage. And you restore it? Yes. Let me drive you, he said. Not a question, not really, but not a command either. A man like him didn't demand. He arranged the world so that refusing felt like walking away from warmth into sleet. She nodded. They exited by a side door. Rain slicked the alley like glass. A black town car waited, purring as if it had a heartbeat. The driver tipped his cap. Inside, the leather smelled rich and new. City lights smeared past in streaks of gold and red. Why were you at Aurelio's? She asked. Because information is a kind of life jacket. I had a meeting, he said. About what? Family business. She smiled despite herself. That's vague. It's also true. They pulled outside her building. Brick, stubbornly charming, windows aglow like the place had learned to love itself through winters. He didn't reach for her. He didn't ask to come up. He only said, if you see him again, call this number. He slid a card across the seat. It was heavy cream stock, no name, just a number. Power wears humility when it doesn't need to advertise. What's your name? Sarah asked, realizing with a jolt that she had asked a stranger to hold her in public and had not learned the simplest thing. He considered her for one heartbeat too long. Giovanni, he said. Giovanni Rossi. Something like a key turned in her chest, clicking into a lock she hadn't known was built for it. She didn't recognize the last name. She would later. Tonight, it was only a shape her mouth wanted to learn. Good night, Giovanni, she said. Good night, Sarah. She climbed the stairs with rain still singing outside. In her apartment, warm, cluttered with brushes and taped sketches and a kettle that whistled even when you didn't ask it to, she stood very still in the middle of the room and understood 2 things. She had done something reckless, and she had never felt safer. She set his card on the counter like a pressed flower. Down on the street, the car didn't pull away. Giovanni watched the light in her window turn on, widen, settle. He breathed once, the kind of breath you take before you sign something binding. Then he dialed his brother. "Luca," he said when the line clicked. "A man named Daniel Porter. Find him. Politely ask why he thought Aurelio's was a good place to harm what belongs to me." "You don't have anything at Aurelio's," Luca said, all grin and knives. "I do now," Giovanni said, and ended the call. Back in the apartment, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You looked happy. Let's fix that." It was a photo from the bar, her, mid-turn, eyes bright. The frame cut in a second later to Daniel's smirk. Her stomach iced over. The air went thin. Her hands shook as she picked up the cream card. She didn't know, not yet, that the number in her palm could tilt a city. She dialed. "Sarah," he said on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting in the spaces between the seconds. "What's wrong? How did you?" She swallowed. "He texted me." "Stay inside," Giovanni said, quiet, turning hard. "Lock your door." She did. He listened to the deadbolt find its home. Beyond the rain, the city stretched like a feral thing. Giovanni's voice came back softer. "Good. Now breathe. Tell me exactly what the message said." She told him. He memorized every syllable, every comma in her fear. When she finished, the silence on the line thickened, then broke. "Sarah." "Yes?" "You did the brave thing tonight," he said. "Let me do the dangerous one." "Are you going to hurt him?" "I'm going to teach him the difference between a woman and a possession," Giovanni said. "Sometimes men only learn in a language they speak." "Which language is that?" she asked, not sure if she wanted the answer. "Consequences," he said. From the curb outside, he watched her window's silhouette approach and pause, a hand touching glass. It was ridiculous how much it moved him. He hung up last, because some chivalries weren't dead, they just wore better suits. The town car slid into the rain. Somewhere in the near distance, a man at a marble bar bragged to the wrong stranger about a woman who had danced with someone else and what he planned to do about it. Somewhere else, phones started to ring that only rang when thunder moved indoors. The city braced. Sarah set the phone down and stared at the door. She could still feel the shape of Giovanni's hand, where he had guided her across the floor, an imprint as warm as a vow she had not yet heard spoken aloud. She went to the window and watched headlights smear white across wet streets. One set slowed. She didn't know it belonged to him again, returning because he didn't leave people he'd promised not to. A darker car settled at the corner, unfamiliar, idling. Sarah's breath fogged the cold glass. Was that Daniel? Had he followed? Did he know her building, her floor, the number of steps from the front door to her hallway? She counted them now, 9, because numbers are steadier than fear. Her phone lit again. Unknown number. Not Giovanni's. She didn't touch it. The screen blinked until it slept. In the street, the darker car didn't move. She turned off the lamp and stepped back into the dark. If she listened, she could still hear the piano from Aurelio's, those smoke-soft notes. She closed her eyes and reached for that river of sound like a rope. Was the car outside a coincidence or a message? And if it was a message, who was it from? Her past or the future that had just learned her name? The storm rinsed the city to its bones. By morning, Chicago felt metal clean, ready for choices. Sarah barely slept. She brewed coffee in the kitchen that remembered every cup. The card on the counter looked back at her, patient, dangerous, inevitable. She told herself not to call. She called anyway. "I'm outside," Giovanni said before she spoke, like a man who preempted disasters for a living. She parted the curtain. The black town car waited, inconspicuous only to people who didn't know how to worry. Across the street, the darker sedan from last night was gone. Relief loosened her shoulders, then tightened something else. Why had he stayed? "You don't sleep much," she said when she reached the curb, umbrella wobbling in wind. "I sleep when the people under my protection do," he said. "That includes you now." She wanted to protest the proprietary sound of that. She didn't. It didn't feel like ownership. It felt like shelter with teeth. He opened the door. I'll drive you to the studio. My boss will appreciate that you arrived in one piece. She gave him the address, a brick and beam rehab in the West Loop that used to be flour and is now light. The elevator clanked like it had sentimental value. Inside the studio, sunlight fell in clean squares. Canvases lined the walls in states of undress. The smell of paper and fixative and quiet discipline wrapped her like an apron. "This is where you make time apologize," Giovanni said, stepping around a table of brushes like they were relics in a church. "Something like that," she said, hiding the smile. He watched her work the way a general might watch a surgeon, fascinated, respectful, aware of the stakes in skin he didn't wear. She unrolled a watercolor washed pail by a burst pipe decades ago, honeysuckle on a windowsill, a little girl's bow, a blue half-sky. With a sable brush so soft it might be mistaken for breath, she coaxed color back to life in patient strokes. "Do you always know what to fix first?" he asked. "No," she said. "I start where the damage dares me to start." He nodded like he understood that more than he should. His phone buzzed. He stepped to the window, voice low. Names stitched themselves through his tone. Luca, Santoro, Porter. He disconnected after 3 words that didn't sound like a man. They sounded like a verdict. "Bring him in." Sarah rinsed a brush. The water bloomed a bruised purple, then cleared. "Is this where you tell me what you do?" she asked. "No," he said, and for once the truth was gentler than a lie. "This is where I tell you what I won't let happen." He faced her fully. "Daniel Porter has been warned to stay away from you. He is careless around the edges, but not stupid. If he forgets, I'll help him remember." "How did you?" "Men like him talk loud in rooms I own," Giovanni said, and for the first time, the shape of that last name flickered familiar in her mind. Rossi. She had heard it in headlines that didn't print unless lawyers gave up. She set the brush down. "Are you?" The word wouldn't climb out of her throat. Mafia belonged to movies, not to men who stood in her studio with eyes that could hold a cup of coffee and a confession at once. He saved her the trouble. "I am the person people call when the police would take too long," he said. "And I am the person the police call when they want something solved without paperwork. Is that a yes? It's a way the city stays standing." She searched his face for cruelty and found law instead, the kind that came with consequences that made sense to wolves and, weirdly, to sheep. "And you decided I'm under that law now?" "I decided last night," he said, between the first and second chorus. She swallowed. Every sensible thing inside her chimed with alarm. Every instinct that had been taught to distrust charm begged her to step back. But this wasn't charm. It was gravity, and she was tired of pretending she didn't know how to fall. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, but this one wasn't Daniel. "Ms. Johnson, this is Detective Alvarez. Please call me regarding a complaint filed last month." The room tilted. "I filed a report," she said softly. "After the first time he grabbed me. I didn't follow up. I thought it would make it worse." Giovanni's eyes cooled, not at her, but at a world that made bravery cost interest. "Do you want me in the room when you call back?" She hesitated. "Would that help?" "It would help me." The kindness of that undid her. She nodded. He stood at the window again, a large shadow between her and anything that wanted to touch her wrong. Detective Alvarez sounded tired and honest. "Ms. Johnson, I wanted to let you know Mr. Porter's employer terminated him last week. There have been 2 complaints unrelated to you. I'm concerned he may escalate his behavior." "We can put a patrol car on your block." "That won't be necessary," Giovanni said softly, close enough that Alvarez could hear and not see. "Her block is covered." Silence, then a professional exhale. "Mr. Rossi, I presume." "You presume correctly." "Then we're aligned in wanting this quiet." "Good," Giovanni said, and ended the call like an agreement had been notarized. Sarah leaned on the work table, dizzy with the speed at which her life had become a thing other people discussed, like a case file. "I don't want a war fought over me," she whispered. He turned, that cold patience melting back into something warm. No war, he said. A boundary. The elevator clanked again. Sarah flinched. Voices. 2 men. Giovanni didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't need to. The door opened and Luca Rossi strolled in with the kind of crooked grin that made secrets feel like invitations. Beside him, Marco Santoro, a velvet dark suit, eyes as civil as a courtroom. Family, muscle disguised as manners. Bellissima, Luca said to the studio, to Sarah, to the way sunlight made everything worth living through. Are we interrupting genius? Yes, Sarah said, recovering a smile. But it will forgive you. Marco set a neat folder on her table like he belonged in offices. Ms. Johnson, he said, we've arranged for someone to walk you to and from this building until Mr. Porter remembers his place. What if he doesn't? She asked. Then we'll rearrange his memory, Luca said lightly, and Sarah couldn't tell if it was a joke until she realized it didn't matter. The effect would be the same. Giovanni flicked the folder open. Inside, a printout of Daniel's credit card charges, the kind of information you don't get unless the world owes you favors. Bars, a late-night cash advance, a pawn shop purchase that read like a euphemism. Knife? Luca asked. Or bravado, Marco said. Giovanni's eyes didn't leave the paper. Both cut, he said. Sarah's chest went cold. I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Giovanni closed the folder. Sarah, he said, and her name in his mouth had a rightness it shouldn't have yet. You didn't build the storm. You're only done letting it rain inside your house. She looked at her hands. There was pigment under her nails, a map of color she put back in the world. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Good, he said softly, almost proud. After you finish today's work, pack a bag. Excuse me. You're not sleeping alone tonight. Her pulse tripped. That's not in my guest room, he added, amused. I own a building with fewer entrances than your walk-up. Let me make a thing easy that shouldn't be this hard. Her gaze bounced to Luca, to Marco, to the street where the world remained hungry. She drew a breath. One night, she said, I don't disappear into anyone's life. Agreed, Giovanni said. You walk in. And that's what she did. By dusk, the studio's windows were fire. The city shook off the day like a coat. Giovanni's car swallowed her and her small canvas bag in leather and quiet. When the elevator in his building opened, it opened into a home that didn't feel like money. It felt like taste learned by loving things that last. Books with spines softened by thumbs. Art that didn't announce itself. Floors that knew the sound of bare feet. Guest room, he said, gesturing down a hall lit like a promise. Kitchen is yours. Every room is, except the locked one. What's behind the locked one? She asked, mouth a little brave. My father, he said, and it was only after she saw his eyes shift that she understood he meant ghosts. Dinner was simple because men who had eaten in every good restaurant eventually learned to love roast chicken. She picked at food she actually wanted and told him about paper grain and sunlight and a childhood spent tracing museum lines with a finger. He didn't tell her much, but he didn't leave her with nothing. My father built an empire with rules he broke last, he said. I inherited it with rules I break never. What are they? Children are sacred. Homes are sacred. Consent is sacred. He sipped wine. 4 years ago, a man ignored the third. He is difficult to find joy without his left hand. Silence settled, not awkward, but aware. Sarah, he said quietly, I don't expect you to be comfortable with what I am. I only expect you to be honest with what you feel. And what if those two things keep arguing? Then I keep showing up until honesty wins. It should have sounded like control. It didn't. It sounded like faith. Later, as she stood at the window in his guest room, the city appeared less hostile, like it wasn't out to get her but simply didn't know her name yet. She traced water on the glass with a fingertip. Her phone buzzed, a number she recognized now, Alvarez. We picked up Porter for questioning about another incident. He's out, but rattled. Stay careful. She texted back, I'm safe. A minute later, another message, this one unknown, a video file. She almost didn't open it, then did, because courage is a muscle you work or you lose. The screen filled with a dim room, a voice she didn't know, a question that turned the floor under her feet to ice. You still want in on Rossi's girl? A second voice. Not my style, but I can deliver her to someone whose is. The camera angled just enough to catch a profile she knew from earlier today, Marco Santoro, his civilized eyes, his perfect tie. Sarah's breath left in a small sound. She stared into the black mirror of the window and saw her own face and the city behind it, and the reflection of a locked door down the hall. If Giovanni's rules were this sacred, why did the man he trusted most sound like betrayal in a language everyone understood? And if she showed him the video, would she be saving him or setting a match to the only shelter she'd found that didn't ask her to be small? She didn't move for a full 10 seconds. The city outside Giovanni's guest room window throbbed in sodium orange and headlight white, and her phone screen had turned her hand blue. The video was grainy, shot at waist level, like someone pretending not to film. A table edge, boots, two voices. You still want in on Rossi's girl? Not my style, but I can deliver her to someone whose is. The second voice was cultured and bored, the way men sound when they know alarms will never be their problem. The angle lifted just enough to catch a profile, close-cut hair, a perfect knot at his throat, the unreadable gaze of a man who'd learned to smile with his mouth, but not his eyes. Marco Santoro. Sarah's pulse tripped, then sprinted. She replayed it, pinched to zoom, watched the same 8 seconds until her stomach turned to glass. If this was true, then the one person Giovanni kept closest had just spoken of her like a parcel to be shipped. If it wasn't true, someone had gone to work to make it look like it was. Either way, she was a target. Either way, her body remembered the heat of a hand at her spine and made a new vow. I will not be furniture. She left the lights off and opened the door. The hall was a hush of warm floorboards and framed black and white photographs. Giovanni's father on a pier with a fish the size of a child, 2 boys in summer light, one already taller, both grinning with the kind of freedom people spend their whole lives trying to buy back. She followed the scent of roasted chicken and clean linen to the living room, where a table sat with 2 half-drunk glasses and a note under a cut crystal paperweight. If you wake, I'm downstairs. G. She pressed her fingers into the paper like it might anchor her. Then she took the stairs, barefoot, one hand on the rail. Down another hallway, a door stood open to a room that didn't belong in this century. Leather Chesterfields, wood dark and oiled, a desk with a map of the city under glass. The window frame winter like a painting. Giovanni stood with his back to her, jacket off, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He looked like a man negotiating with the night. Giovanni? He turned. The fatigue around his eyes softened when he saw her, then sharpened when he saw her face. Sarah, what happened? She held the phone out. This came to me. No number. Just this. He didn't ask if he could take it. He didn't need to. She put the phone in his palm and watched something invisible click behind his eyes. Threat triage. Triage for truth. He listened once, twice, a third time, and then set the phone down like it might bite. Come here, he said, and there wasn't any room in the words for argument. She went. He didn't touch her. He just placed himself between her and the rest of the world, a wall that breathed. I don't know what to think, she whispered. If this is real. If it's real, he said quietly. I'll bury him so deep they'll name a train station after him, and no one will ask why it stops at an empty field. He held her gaze. But I don't make graves on edited rumors. Edited? He pointed at her phone. The background hum. Hear it? He replayed the clip and closed his eyes. That's fluorescent. Long tubes, high ceiling, concrete echo, but muffled by cloth. No ice machine, no espresso hiss, no register beep. Not a bar, not a club. And the voice he's answering? That one's clipped to a chest, lapel mic. His mouth tightened. Whoever sent this wants you to panic and me to be reckless. And Marco? She asked, throat tight. Do you trust him? I trust that he knows what happens to men who sell my people. A beat. And I trust my own verification more than any video. You're not angry? Oh, I'm furious, he said, so evenly it made the room colder. But anger is a bad driver. Tonight it sits in the back seat. He hit a key on a lacquered console phone. Ethan. A voice came back immediately, American and young, with caffeine for blood. Yeah, boss. Pull metadata off a file I'm sending. Track origination if you can. Priorities. Device signature, compression artifacts, voice print match to Santoro, or anyone in my first 3 rings. On it. Giovanni ended the call and finally looked straight into Sarah's fear. Do you want to leave? No. The word surprised them both. She meant I don't want to leave you, and she meant I'm tired of running from things I didn't cause. She took a breath and gave him the straight of it. I'm scared. And I don't want to be stupid about who to trust. Good, he said. Fear isn't the enemy. It's the instrument panel. You still have the wheel. He poured water into a glass she hadn't seen him fill and set it within reach. Drink. When she did, 2 gulps, then another, he nodded once, as if they'd completed a small mission together. Come see something. He led her down the hall, past the guest room and the photographs and the locked door she now knew he wouldn't make a mystery of forever. He opened another door with a simple key and flicked on a light. A library. Not the kind that men put in houses so that other men will call them cultivated, but the kind that happens when a boy learns to love silence and grows into a man who keeps it. First editions and paperbacks with broken spines lived together like family. In the corner, an easel. On the easel, a watercolor under museum glass, honeysuckle on a windowsill, a little girl's bow, a blue half sky. Her blue, the smudged one she'd coaxed all afternoon. She took a step without meaning to. That's my mother's, he said, a gift from an old neighbor when I was 10. She used to stop and look at it before she left for work. When she didn't come home one night, I sat on the floor and stared until the sky and the painting felt like the only honest thing left. He glanced at her. The water damage is new, a burst pipe at the foundation warehouse. We sent out 3 pieces to different conservators. I didn't know one of them was you until you told me what you do. Sarah's mouth went dry. The invoice on her work table this morning had listed the client as Rossi Foundation, private collection. She had told herself Rossi was a common name. You bought it back? I never sold it. His jaw flicked. Someone else tried to. We corrected the misunderstanding. She studied the painting. The sunlight in the scene had always felt real. Now it felt personal. You could have told me. I could have, he said. I didn't because I wanted you to choose to stay near me for you, not for a canvas we both care about. Her chest tightened. The truth was disorienting and beautiful in the same way. He had let her choose. He was still letting her. Footsteps on the hall, calm, civilized. Marco paused at the threshold, eyes flicking to the painting, then to Sarah, then to Giovanni. He did not glance at the small camera in the corner of the ceiling, which apparently everyone but her had noticed. The man wore restraint like a tailored suit. You called, he said mildly. I did, Giovanni said. Step in. The air changed, thin as glass. Sarah made herself meet Marco's gaze, looking for the glint she'd heard in the clip. She saw only a man whose pupils measured rooms and exits without moving. Giovanni spoke first. Where were you between 9 and 10 tonight? Warehouse on South Halsted, then the West Loop. Isabella walked Ms. Johnson to the car. Then I met Alvarez at the station. You told me to send Porter home rattled and sober. I did. Sarah startled. Isabella, your shadow, Giovanni said. You'll meet her at breakfast. Marco folded his hands. Is there something you need me to say for the camera, or are we pretending it isn't on? Giovanni's mouth didn't move, but his eyes did. Say what's useful. I've been the same useful for 12 years, Marco said, almost bored. If you want me to say I'm loyal, I'll say it. If you want me to prove it, give me a name and I'll bring you the man who made a mistake with your woman. The last word landed heavy. He didn't say girl. He didn't say property. He said the thing a man says when he understands that affection and territory are not the same but sometimes feel like cousins. Giovanni slid Sarah's phone across the desk, screen up. Someone sent this. Marco watched. Once, twice. He tipped his head a fraction. That's not my voice, he said. And if it is, it was moved to this party from somewhere else. Identify the room, Giovanni said. Marco closed his eyes, listened with his body, then opened them. Not one of ours. Too clean for a union hall, too dirty for a hotel. Industrial, but not big. Fabric somewhere above. Banners? A church basement? No. Thicker. Sound blankets. He looked at Sarah. Someone with money and a nervous system to protect recorded this. Proof, Giovanni said, not a question. Give me the night, Marco answered. Giovanni didn't nod. He didn't need to. The two men regarded each other over a long piece of memory. Then Marco turned to Sarah. He didn't offer apology. He offered context. I said your name once today, he told her. To Alvarez, so he'd know which woman not to use as bait without asking. He rolled back his cuff and showed a thin scar at his wrist that didn't match his suit. The last time I failed a woman this family promised to keep safe, I bled for it. I don't repeat lessons. Sarah didn't like him. Liking felt beside the point. Trust was not a switch. It was a dimmer. Tonight the light moved one small notch. When Marco left, silence swept in behind him. Giovanni let it settle, then took the next step as if the floor had been built for it. Tomorrow, he said, you go to your studio as usual. Isabella will walk with you. My driver takes you at night. You answer Alvarez's calls. You do not answer unknown numbers. If Daniel appears within 20 feet of you, you step away and let the man in the gray coat between you and him. His name is Mateo. He's very polite. And you? She asked, because every plan is only as steady as its anchor. I meet with men who need reminding, he said, and I keep a promise I made last night. She laced her fingers together to hide their tremble. What promise? That your life will be yours, he said simply. Sleep didn't come for an hour. When it did, it was because the house knew how to hold people. In the morning, Isabella Moretti waited in the kitchen with a mug already in her hand. She was tall, with a braid like a rope and a jacket that didn't bother pretending not to be armored. Ms. Johnson, she said, warm. I've admired your work without knowing your name. Now I get to keep you in one piece while you make old paper breathe again. Sarah laughed, and the sound felt like a little mercy. Deal. Call me Sarah. Only if you call me Isabella. She angled her head toward the hallway. Boss says we walk. He'll meet you at the studio at lunch. Outside, winter had polished the city to a clean cold. Isabella matched Sarah's pace exactly, the art of protection passing for friendship to anyone not trained to look. Their conversation moved from paint weights to favorite diners to women who move through rooms like they earn the air. At the studio door, a man in a gray coat read his newspaper like it held the last good joke. He didn't glance up. Morning, Ms. Johnson, he said anyway, and the paper flipped one page like a wave. Inside, the watercolor waited with a patience that felt almost human. Sarah slid into work and let her hands tell her body what to do. Layer by layer, the blue returned, not garish and new, but grateful. When she lifted her brush and the sky looked like itself again, her throat prickled. She labeled the progress with a pencil note and reached for her phone to photograph the stage. A new text. You choose nice prisons. No number. A second ping. The guest room window is charming. Her skin went electric. She snapped a photo of the screen and sent it to Giovanni with no words. His reply arrived inside 10 seconds. Stay inside. I'm on my way. Isabella was already at the door. Phones? She asked, and Sarah handed hers over without argument. Isabella's thumbs moved. Spoofed through 3 relays. They want us to chase phantoms. Do you think it's Daniel? I think Daniel is a symptom, Isabella said. Men like him never learn to be architects. Architects of what? Bad nights, Isabella said, then smiled like it was a joke worth surviving. The elevator clanked. Sarah's stomach cold rolled until the doors opened and Giovanni stepped out, all black wool and quiet command. Something released in her chest she hadn't consented to tighten. "Show me," he said. She did. He read, glanced once at the windows, once at the neighboring rooftop, and then took out his phone. "Ethan, 2 pings, text towers near West Lake and Morgan. Pull camera feeds. I want every plate within 60 seconds of those timestamps." Ethan said something fast and improbable. Giovanni hung up and looked at Sarah. "Do you want to go somewhere that isn't a glass box?" "Yes." "Good. Bring your brush." "Now?" He smiled a fraction. "Now." They drove 10 minutes and stepped into a room so silent it could have been outside of time. The Rossi Foundation's conservation lab was larger than her studio, purer, the air fixed at a temperature that made papers sigh. White walls, white tables. A woman at a microscope glanced up and saluted with a scalpel like a conductor's baton. "You built this," Sarah said, breath already quieter for the space. "I paid for it," Giovanni corrected. "The women in this room built it." "Thank you," the woman at the microscope said without looking up again. "Regina," Giovanni introduced. "She yells at me when I try to hang art near a vent." "I yell at everyone when they do that," Regina said. "Vents are treacherous." The joke ran a thin, warm thread through Sarah's spine. On the far wall, 3 frames waited under muslin hoods. Giovanni lifted one with the care of someone who has carried broken things and learned how not to make them worse. "Your mother's," Sarah said, throat tight. "She would like it better with your hands on it," he said. "You do a thing in the sky I haven't seen anyone else do." Heat rushed her face. Praise from men like him usually came with a bill. This felt like a clean check, no string attached. Work steadied her. She mixed a blue that wasn't exactly original, but remembered. Regina hummed. Giovanni didn't hover. He walked the perimeter of the room like a moat that moved. For 20 minutes, nothing existed but pigment coaxed into breath. Her phone vibrated on the table. Regina passed it without breaking rhythm. "Ethan, source for the video. Basement studio used by a podcast on West Fulton. Rented last week by E. Marino. That's Enzo Marino, Valenti's media guy. Also, voice print on Marco line is a 72% match, but the consonants have a brick wall reverb that isn't in Santoro's usual profile." Someone moved syllables. "You were right. It's a stitch." Giovanni showed her the text. Relief hit so hard her knees wobbled, then a smaller, colder thing slid in behind it. "Someone wanted me to doubt the only person you trust with your back." "That's the point," Giovanni said. "Family only falls from the inside." "Valenti," she said carefully, rolling the name in her mouth. "Rival? Old kind," he said. "Men who think violence is more persuasive than patience. He's been trying to put a hand on the West Side contract since he learned to shave." "And me?" "You," Giovanni said, "are leverage he will never get to hold." The simplicity of it stole her breath. The certainty did too. There were men who made declarations to hear their own echo. Giovanni made them because echoes came looking for him. By late afternoon, the sky and the watercolor had memory again. Giovanni stepped to her elbow as she set the finest brush down like a peace offering. "You're beautiful when you win," he said, voice low. "Is this winning?" "It is tonight." He didn't kiss her. He didn't touch her. He simply let the sentences he wasn't saying sit between them like a candle. Warm, not yet flame. A courier met them at the studio. A small box, plain brown, no return address. Isabella and Matteo flanked her without making a scene. Sarah lifted the lid. A single Polaroid, the kind that looks like nostalgia and smells like chemicals. It was the dance floor at Aurelio's, the exact second her face had turned toward Giovanni's shirt front, and Rest had won a tiny battle over panic. Someone had written across the glossy square in a permanent marker that bled, "Mine." Under the photo, a brass key on red ribbon, stamped B1, her building's basement. Isabella swore softly in Italian. Matteo took the box with 2 fingers, like it might explode. Giovanni didn't change shape at all. He became more of whatever he already was. "We're not going down there," Sarah said, before anyone asked her to be brave in the wrong way. "No," Giovanni said, and the word was a wall. He touched his phone. Alvarez. The detective answered on the first ring, voice thin with snow and impatience. You got a key too? You as well? Giovanni asked. Half the block, Alvarez said. Someone wants a party in the dark. Not tonight, Giovanni said. We'll turn on the lights from the street and see who gets itchy. I'll park a car out front, Alvarez said. Save me some popcorn. Giovanni ended the call and looked at Sarah. You don't go home tonight. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. I know, she said, answering a larger question. Back at his building, the elevator doors slid open to the smell of seared steak and lemon. Luca was at the kitchen island, sleeves pushed up, a pan sizzling like applause. Don't look so shocked, Luca said. I can feed people. You can burn butter, Giovanni corrected. I can burn butter attractively, Luca said, then kissed the air near Sarah's cheek. How's the sky? Blue again? Better, she said. Good, Luca said. The world needs more things put right. Dinner was loud not because of volume, but because of the presence of men who had learned to breathe all the way. Isabella told a story about tackling a pickpocket who turned out to be a city councilman's nephew. Matteo added 3 words at the end that made everyone laugh harder. Sarah did not realize she was relaxed until her shoulders startled at a knock. Giovanni's hand went to the small of her back before she could think to be afraid. Stay, he said. Eat. He opened the door to a boy in a navy suit with shoes so polished they reflected the apartment like a tiny upside-down world. The kid couldn't have been more than 18. He held a fabric-wrapped package like it might be holy. Mr. Rossi, he said, trying not to stare. From Mr. Valenti. Giovanni took the package without looking at the boy. Tell your boss thank you for the etiquette lesson. Yes, sir. Giovanni unwrapped the fabric to reveal a vintage vinyl record and a white card. The card said, in an expensive hand, when you finish with the girl, send her to someone who appreciates antiques. CV. Luca's smile died. Isabella's braid seemed to go tighter on her head. Who writes like a museum catalog? Luca muttered. Giovanni slid the record back into its sleeve and set it on the counter as if it were trash that used to be useful. He didn't flash with anger. He chilled with calculation. We respond tomorrow, he said softly. At the gala. Sarah blinked. Gala? The Alder Fund, Luca said. Old money pretending it cares about new problems. Carmine Valenti loves it because the cameras are bright and the donors are blind. Giovanni's gaze found Sarah's. Come with me. As a shield? She hated that it was the first word that came. As the woman I danced with, he said. As the person it would be my honor to be seen beside. And yes, also because there's nothing like daylight to make a cockroach remember the cracks he crawled out of. She should say no. She should keep her life as small as it had been last week, when her biggest fear was a bruise peeking over a wrist bone. But small had not made her safe. Small had not felt like hers. Yes, she said, and the kitchen felt larger. Luca clapped. We'll need a dress, Isabella. I have a place, Isabella said, already texting. Good, Giovanni said, and we'll need the right story. What story? Sarah asked. The true one, he said. That you asked me to dance and I was wise enough to say yes. She went to bed with that line living under her ribs. The city purred, a big cat that would let you pet it if you kept your eyes open. She stared at the ceiling for a long time, the shape of tomorrow throwing strange shadows on the walls. When sleep finally came, it was because she let herself imagine one thing uncomplicated, a room with music and his hand at her back again. She woke early. Coffee, a shower, her hands on the glass the way they had been on the watercolor. Giovanni's house moved around her like it had learned a new rhythm. She reached for the guest room curtains and stopped. On the window, written backward on the outside in the oil from someone's fingertip, a single sentence waited to be read from within. He already danced with someone else. She stared until the letters resolved. They were small and neat. The kind of spite that belongs to men who don't bleed when they should. The glass was cold under her palm. The city beyond it was just waking. She texted Isabella the photo. The reply came fast. No cameras caught the writer. "We'll dust it," but whoever did it wore care like cologne. Sarah leaned her forehead against the pane and exhaled. Tonight they would walk into a room that loved money more than truth. Tonight men who sent boys with packages and boys with keys would smile for cameras. And sometime between the first song and the last, someone would choose the language they wanted to speak to her in. Threat or respect? Which one would the city understand louder? The night arrived dressed like temptation. Downtown shimmered in gold, traffic humming, camera flashes blinking against marble facades. The Alder Fund Charity Gala was the kind of event where power disguised itself as generosity. The chandeliers glowed like captured suns, and a quartet played a waltz too elegant for honesty. Giovanni Rossi stepped from the limousine first. Black tuxedo, no tie, the confidence of a man who didn't ask permission to exist. Then, Sarah. She emerged in a gown the color of midnight silk, a slit along her leg that whispered rather than shouted. Her hair was pinned loosely, a few curls framing her neck. When she looked up, the world slowed. Even the cameras forgot their jobs for 1 second. Giovanni offered his arm. "Ready?" he asked softly. "As I'll ever be," she said, heart racing. "You'll be fine. They'll think you're mine." She hesitated. "Am I not?" He smiled, not answering, only tightening his hand around hers as they crossed into the ballroom. Every head turned, some in curiosity, some in calculation. Carmine Valenti was already there. White tuxedo jacket, crimson pocket square, smile sharp enough to bleed. He stood near the bar like a host who owned the night, the kind of man who applauded his own charm. "Giovanni Rossi," Carmine called, voice smooth. "You do show up when there's a spotlight." "And you hide behind one," Giovanni replied without breaking stride. The crowd chuckled nervously, pretending not to listen while listening to every word. Carmine's eyes found Sarah. "And this must be the reason you've been skipping board meetings." Sarah smiled politely, though her pulse screamed. "I'm just a guest." "No one is just anything near Giovanni," Carmine said. "He collects things worth keeping." Giovanni's hand slid protectively to her back. "Careful, Carmine. When men like you talk about collecting, I start hearing confessions." The tension was silk thin, but steel strong. Carmine laughed. "Enjoy your evening. It might be your last easy one." Giovanni's reply was simple. "It will be yours." They walked away. At their table, the orchestra shifted into a slow waltz. Giovanni leaned close. "Do you trust me?" "I'm learning to." "Then dance with me. This time not because someone's watching, because I am." Her breath caught. He rose, extended his hand, and the room parted like a curtain. Cameras flashed again. But this time, Sarah didn't flinch. His hand was warm at her waist. Her body remembered the rhythm from that first night at Aurelio's. "You belong to yourself," he murmured near her ear. "Never forget that, even if I look at you like you don't." Her chest tightened. "Why do you look at me like that?" "Because I'm not used to wanting something I can't control." She met his eyes. "Maybe that's why you need it." For a heartbeat, he forgot the war, the enemies, the codes. There was only music, the scent of her skin, and a dangerous peace. Then the peace shattered. A waiter passed with champagne. Giovanni's instincts pricked. Too close, too deliberate. He caught the man's wrist mid-pour, saw the tremor, the hesitation. The tray tilted, a glass toppled, liquid splashed, and beneath the scent of citrus and wine came something chemical. Bitter. Wrong. "Don't drink," Giovanni whispered. Sarah froze. "What?" He moved fast, steadying her with one hand, flipping the glass with the other. The liquid hissed as it touched the marble floor, etching faint white streaks. The crowd gasped. Giovanni's guards, disguised as donors, closed in silently. Carmine lifted his own glass across the room. "Accidents happen," he said, smiling too widely. Giovanni's voice was quiet, deadly. "Not twice." He leaned toward Sarah. "We're leaving." "No." "If we leave, he wins," she said, surprising him. "You want to stay?" "Yes." You said daylight makes them remember their cracks, so let's stay in the light. For the first time, Giovanni smiled, not his polite one, not his lethal one. A real smile, the kind that men like him forget how to make. You really are trouble, he murmured. She lifted her chin. Then maybe I'm exactly your kind. The night carried on. Giovanni's men neutralized the waiter quietly. The crowd never knew. Sarah sat through speeches, applause, and meaningless toasts, feeling his eyes on her from across the table. When he looked at her, the noise dimmed, as if the city held its breath. At the end of the event, an auction began. Art, jewels, a classic watch. Lot Thermometer 17. A watercolor, restored, 19th century, private donation. Her heart stuttered. The honeysuckle painting, the one she'd restored. She turned to Giovanni. Did you? He shook his head. Not me. The auctioneer smiled. A gift from an anonymous patron. Proceeds for the Alder Fund. Giovanni's expression darkened. Valenti. Carmine lifted his paddle, eyes glinting. Let's start the bidding. Giovanni raised his own. 200,000. 3, Carmine countered. 5. 6. Sarah watched the numbers climb, her pulse sinking with each bid. The painting wasn't just art, it was Giovanni's memory, his mother's piece. Whoever held it could claim a piece of his past. Carmine's voice sliced the air. 1 million. The room gasped. Giovanni didn't blink. 2. Silence. Then the gavel came down. Sold. Carmine's smile faltered. Giovanni's didn't. He turned to Sarah. Some things aren't for sale. She swallowed hard. That was a lot of money for a memory. It's not the money, he said quietly. It's the principle. No one takes what's sacred and makes it currency. And then softer. That includes you. They left past midnight. Outside, the winter air tasted electric. Giovanni's driver opened the door, but he paused. You were brave tonight, he said. Braver than most men I know. I was terrified. That's the definition of brave, he said. Their eyes met. Something wordless passed. The recognition of two people learning how to belong somewhere again. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Come home with me. Is it safe? No, he said truthfully. But it's honest. She smiled faintly. Then yes. As the car slid into the dark, Chicago's skyline shimmered behind them. A city built on deals and danger, about to learn what happened when love entered the equation. But as they reached his building, the headlights of another car flicked once, twice, a signal from the shadows. Inside that car, someone watched through a scope, whispering into a phone. She's with him, and she has no idea what's coming. The car rolled into the underground garage with a low, steady hum. Giovanni's hand never left Sarah's. The gala's glitter still clung to her skin, but the warning from the shadowed car rode along with them, cold as a fingertip on the back of her neck. Wait, Giovanni told the driver, and the engine idled. He scanned the mirrors, reading light and angles like a second language. Matteo? Level clear, came the calm reply from the gray coat in the second vehicle, but someone blinked us from the street. Copy. Giovanni squeezed Sarah's fingers once, like a code for with me. The elevator opened straight into his lobby. Marble, warm light, the quiet of money that didn't have to prove itself. He guided her in, then held a palm over a sleek panel, new hardware she hadn't seen before. You upgraded, she said, half trying to lighten what the air refused to lighten. I added one door no one else sees, he said. You're the reason. Inside the penthouse, the city sprawled in glass. Luca's jacket was slung over a chair, tie loose. Isabella leaned in the kitchen doorway with a glass of water. Matteo ghosted past a window like a reflection that didn't belong to anyone. Report, Giovanni said. Isabella nodded toward a tablet on the counter. Alvarez picked up 2 boys in a borrowed sedan 2 blocks down. Scope mounted but no firing pin. Scare piece. Who sent them? Sarah asked. Valenti likes theater, Isabella said. He wanted you to perform fear. You didn't. Giovanni looked at Sarah with quiet pride. You stayed in the light. Not alone, she said, and meant it. Luca brought a first aid kit even though no one looked hurt. Habit. He set it down with a thud. Want to talk about that auction, big brother? 1 million was a nice punch. 2 million was a sermon. Giovanni shrugged. He tried to buy our mother's window. Sarah felt it again. The small shock, the human truth under all the iron. Thank you, she said, for letting it stay sacred. His gaze softened. Some prices you pay so you can live with yourself. He reached for his glass, and then the window across the room starburst, a bright, mean flower of safety glass whitening at the center. Down, he said, already moving. He took Sarah to the floor with a gentleness that made the violence outside feel farther away than it was. The second crack came a full breath later, a ricochet singing angry against concrete. Isabella had her weapon out, but holstered again when she saw Giovanni's hand rise. A signal. 2 fingers. Hold. Wait. Silence. A siren far away. The city pretending nothing happened. Matteo's voice in Giovanni's earpiece. Backblast from the old parking structure, rooftop to rooftop, shooter already gone. Any cameras? Giovanni asked. Too blind. They knew where to stand. Then they know us too well, Luca muttered, eyes scanning shadows as if they owed him names. Giovanni helped Sarah up. The tiny flecks of glass glittered in her hair like a crown that had come from the wrong story. His thumb moved once at her temple, slow and careful. I'm okay, she said, surprised to hear it and to find it true. You're shaking, he said softly. I'm mad, she corrected, the echo of last night warming the word. Good, Giovanni said. Anger tells you what to fix. He turned to Isabella. Lock the building. Nobody in or out without my eyes on them. Done. To Matteo. Call in Giro. I want the nest on that garage mapped before sunrise. On it, Matteo said, already moving. To Luca. Pull the foundation schedule. If any shipment creates a soft path, reroute it. Luca tipped 2 fingers in a mock salute and was on his phone. And me? Sarah asked, half daring him to leave her out. You, he said, meeting every ounce of her challenge, are the only part of this I won't outsource. He drew a long breath, then looked away, jaw tight. I don't like bringing war to where you sleep, he said. That's a line. Home is sacred. Then don't, she said simply. I can go to the studio or, what did you call it? The lab. The quiet room. The conservation lab, Isabella said. Regina will make you tea and judge your brush technique. Sarah let out a breath that almost became a laugh. The shock had edges, but here were people smoothing them without pretending they didn't cut. Giovanni touched the broken window. Tempered, he said to no one. They wanted a crack, not a kill. Message, Luca said. Always, Giovanni answered. He turned back to Sarah. There are nights you buy peace with money. There are nights you buy it with blood. Tonight we buy it with patience. He held out his hand. Come see the room I've never shown anyone. She followed him down the hall, past the library and its easy light, to the locked door she'd noticed on her first night. He opened it with a small brass key. No guns. No safes. No secrets you could carry in your hand. Only a bench, a low table, and 4 framed photographs on the wall. 2 boys on a summer stoop. A woman at a kitchen sink, back turned, sunlight on her hair. A man in a dark suit with a wedding ring he couldn't stop touching, a blank 4th frame. What is this? She whispered. Where I remember what this is for, he said. So I don't turn into a man who wins and forgets why he cared. He gestured at the blank frame. That's for the thing I haven't found yet. She watched him, understanding more than the words said. What would go there? He looked at her then, so plainly it turned the room warm. Whatever makes the rest of it make sense. Her throat tightened. She set her palm on the table to steady herself and felt the smooth grain like a pulse. Giovanni. The buzzer on the panel chimed once. Isabella's voice came soft. Boss, Alvarez at the door. Giovanni squeezed her hand, a later that sounded like I'll answer that honestly when answering is safe. He let her back out, the walls closing the secret behind them with a hush. Detective Alvarez stood in the foyer, coat damp, eyes clear. He took in the webbed window, the glass under the rug, the tension standing in the corners like extra people. "Evening," he said. "You breaking your own rules now, Rossi?" "Someone else did," Giovanni said. "We're fixing the math." Alvarez reached into his satchel and pulled out an envelope with a purple stamp. "Federal subpoena," he said, wincing. "Grand jury. They want you, and they want Ms. Johnson." Sarah blinked. "Me? Why?" Alvarez didn't look at Giovanni before he answered. "2 weeks ago, your ex filed a complaint, then withdrew it. Today, he amended it again with a statement that mentions you and Rossi by name. Someone higher up wants to see if they can turn you into a witness, or a wedge." Giovanni's mouth thinned. "Valenti's lawyer loves a room with microphones." Alvarez nodded. "I'll do what I can to keep this quiet. But the paper exists. I'm here as a courtesy, not a courier." Sarah took the envelope. Her name looked strange beside the words, "in the matter of." She ran her thumb over the raised seal until her skin warmed it. "Do I have to go?" she asked. "Eventually," Alvarez said honestly. "Or we file to quash. Either way, you'll be harassed for a while." Giovanni's voice came low. "No one harasses her. They can come at me." "They will," Alvarez said. "That's the point." Alvarez left with a promise to text if he heard the footsteps getting closer. The elevator closed and the building exhaled. "Price of protection," Luca said, tapping the subpoena. "They can't beat him in the street, so they try in a room with wood paneling." "I don't want to be a weapon," Sarah said, to no one and everyone. "You're not," Giovanni said. "You're the person we build the room for." She believed him. She hated the situation. Both could be true. "Eat," Isabella ordered, practical as gravity. People think better with something warm in them. The kitchen rebuilt the night in small ways. Bowls, bread, the quiet clink of forks. Giovanni didn't sit. He stood behind Sarah's chair, one hand on the wood, like he was ready to lift the whole table and carry it if he had to. When they finished, Luca hauled the first aid kit back over with exaggerated drama. "Since no one's bleeding, I'll pretend I'm not disappointed." He reached for Giovanni's shoulder to make a joke, and froze. "What?" Sarah asked, already moving. Luca's fingers came away with red. A thin line of blood traced along the back of Giovanni's shoulder, glinting at the edge of his shirt where the fabric had darkened. "Grazed," Giovanni said, as if reporting light rain. "Shirt off," Isabella said, brooking no argument. He obeyed. The jacket went first, then buttons, each one a small surrender. The cut was shallow but clean, a neat kiss of heat that had lifted skin. Red smeared under his collarbone where the glass dust had clung. "Hospital," Sarah started. "No," Giovanni and Isabella said together. They glanced at each other. She rolled her eyes in sisterly exasperation and reached for antiseptic. Sarah stood so close she could memorize the shape of his chest, the map of old scars like a history book with no captions. Her hand shook for the first time that night. "Hey," he said, as if they were alone. "I'm here." "You got shot because of me," she said. "I got grazed because a small man wants to feel bigger," he corrected. "And I chose to be where you were. I'll keep choosing that." She pressed her lips together. "Does it hurt?" "Not as much as not touching you." Heat flooded her face. She busied herself with gauze so she wouldn't do something reckless, like answer that line the way a body answers gravity. Isabella taped the dressing with brisk competence. "No suit jackets for 2 days, she decreed. "I own knitwear," Giovanni deadpanned. "You own problems," Isabella said, and the two of them smiled in the way families do when they're tired and grateful to still have each other to annoy. Luca's phone buzzed. He read, then whistled. "Porter." "Daniel?" Sarah's stomach went cold. "Hospital," Luca said. "Somebody tuned him up. He's not dead. He's also not talking." "Alvarez?" Giovanni asked. "On scene," Luca replied. "Says Porter had a note in his pocket." "What note?" Sarah asked, already bracing. Luca read from the screen. It says, "When kings play, pawns break." And on the back, your initials, Sarah, SJ. The room went still. The old world loved its metaphors. The new world knew how to make them cut. Giovanni's voice gentled. This is not your fault. It feels like it, she said. Feelings aren't facts, he said. They're weather. We dress for them and keep walking. She swallowed. What happens now? Now, Giovanni said, we make 2 lists. One of threats, one of promises. Threats first, Isabella said, pulling her braid tighter. Valenti escalates. The feds sniff. Whoever staged that video has more where it came from. Promises, Giovanni said, looking at Sarah. You sleep without fear. You work without watching the door every 5 minutes, and when we walk into any room, we walk in together. It should have felt like a vow he couldn't keep. It felt instead like a line drawn in chalk across a floor. Step over, and the house will turn on you. Sarah exhaled. Her body remembered music. It remembered the heat of his hand at her back. It remembered her own voice at Aurelio's, asking a stranger to dance and finding an answer she hadn't known she needed. Okay, she said. We keep walking. He nodded once, as if they'd signed something binding. Tomorrow, he said, you go to the lab. Regina wants you at 10. I meet with Alvarez at noon. At 3, we make Valenti answer a question in a room he doesn't control. What question? She asked. Who let him into our house? Giovanni said simply. She frowned. Into the building? Into our day, he clarified. None of this hits this hard without someone opening a door from the inside. Her mind flipped through faces. Matteo's calm, Isabella's dry humor, Luca's impatient warmth, Marco's civility, the boy with the vinyl, Daniel's mean smile, the waiter's shaking hand. She hated herself for even arranging them on a mental shelf. Trust is not blind, Giovanni said, reading the fight on her face. It's a set of tests we pass by showing up. Let people pass or fail on their own. Even Marco? She asked quietly. Especially Marco, he said. I've known him since we were kids. When someone tries to cut a bond like that, I assume the knife is cheap and the hand is scared. She nodded slowly. The logic steadied her even as the unease didn't fade. Somewhere in the city, a man with a white tuxedo jacket and a crimson square held a phone he should never have been given. Somewhere else, a courtroom waited with microphones that would twist whatever truth they were handed. Midnight slipped past. The broken window wore temporary film like a bandage. The city beyond it glittered like nothing was wrong. Giovanni walked her to the guest room. He didn't kiss her goodnight. He didn't need to. The space between them had stopped feeling empty and started feeling like a promise, lined with patience. At the doorway, he paused. Sarah. She looked up. You asked me a question earlier, he said. Am I yours? Her breath caught. I said, am I not? He gave her the smallest, most dangerous smile she had ever seen. Ask me again when this house is quiet. He left before she could answer. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the building breathe around her like a living thing. Eventually, sleep came. It lasted 2 hours. Her phone chimed at 3:18 a.m. A single image, no text. The honeysuckle watercolor, on a work table, under wrong light. In the bottom right corner, a faint, fresh signature that did not belong to the original artist. A forgery stamp. Bold. Brazen. A second image followed. The same painting back on the easel in the lab, Regina's tweezers beside it, except the sky was a shade off. To most eyes, nothing. To hers, a lie. Her heart fell through her ribs. Someone had switched the piece while she slept. She sent the photos to Giovanni and Isabella at once. Isabella replied with 2 words. On my way. Giovanni's answer came 3 seconds later. Don't move. Sarah stood at the window and watched the city wake up the way it always did. One light at a time, like hope you could measure. Below, a single car idled at the curb with its lights off, waiting. If the painting wasn't the original anymore, then what else had been replaced in the last 24 hours? And when they turned the lab's lights on, whose reflection would they find already inside the glass? The Civic Theater wore red velvet and gold leaf like an old promise. From the balcony, Sarah scanned the hall. Crowds in winter coats, ushers in black, an orchestra pit that glowed like a secret. Giovanni stood beside her in a dark coat, the bandage under his shirt a private truth. Isabella and Matteo flanked them at a distance. Alvarez took a seat on the aisle with two plainclothes officers who looked like they preferred day shifts and quiet paperwork. On stage, the curtain stirred. A white lily lay at the edge of the pit, just where the photo had shown. Sarah's skin tightened. Giovanni's hand found hers, the silent code for "with me." "Remember," he said softly. "He invited us. He thinks he owns the room. He doesn't." The house lights dimmed. A hush folded the audience. Bows lifted. Music rose. Clean, aching, inevitable. "Cite the broker," Isabella murmured over comms. "Blue suit, scar at the ear." Sarah found him first. Right side, orchestra row G. Thomas Rinaldi leaned back like a man cataloging trophies. 2 seats over, a slim figure with a neat jawline and a small silver charm on his key ring. J. Julian Vicari. Giovanni didn't move. He watched the stage until the first pas de deux began, then nodded once. Alvarez stood as if stretching his legs. 2 officers drifted down the aisle like men who'd lost something under their seats. Isabella started down the opposite staircase. "Not yet," Giovanni murmured. "No panic. We end this in the light." The dancers turned like the idea of grace made real. Sarah forced her breath to match the music. She was not a pawn. She was not furniture. She had walked into the lion's den on purpose. Halfway through the act, a hairline movement at the back of the orchestra level snagged Giovanni's attention. An usher who wasn't an usher lifting a small device toward the mezzanine. A signal relay, thin as a candy bar. "Julian's trick," he said. "Isabella." "On it," she answered, ghosting to intercept. Rinaldi leaned toward Julian, whispering, a smile inside his voice. Giovanni's phone hummed once in his pocket. "Ethan, Marino's studio is live. Backup drives syncing to a cloud we control. Audio of Aurelio's compromise captured. Ledger names matched. You have your proof." Giovanni exhaled slowly. "Now," he told Alvarez. The detective touched the back of his badge. The first officer reached Rinaldi's row and bent, polite as a maitre d'. "Sir, would you come with us?" Rinaldi smiled, all teeth. "Not during the adagio." Giovanni spoke for the first time, his voice traveling cleanly through the hush. "Stand up, Thomas." The name hit like a cymbal. Heads turned. Dancers faltered half a beat and found the music again. Rinaldi's eyes flicked to the balcony. Recognition. Annoyance. He rose anyway, because men who survive long in this city learn when not to run. Julian started to stand too, then froze as Isabella's hand found his wrist, light as a teacher's correction. Sarah felt it before she saw it. The shift in air that says someone is doing the wrong math. At the far end of the row, a man with a shaved head and a too-still coat pocket pushed up, and the glint of a short blade flashed under stage light. "Matteo," Giovanni said. Gray coat moved like a rumor. Matteo reached the man as he stood. The knife skated off nothing. The man folded like a mistake corrected. The music never stopped. Rinaldi turned his palms out in a gesture of cultural fatigue. "Really, Giovanni? At the ballet?" "At the scene of your first theft," Giovanni said. His voice was still, not loud. "You like rituals, so do I." Julian tried to twist free. Isabella didn't tighten her grip. She only looked at him until his bones remembered how little they wanted to disappoint her. "Carmine wanted a second act," Giovanni said. "He'll have to watch it on a screen." "From where?" Rinaldi asked lightly. "Tahiti?" "Cook County," Alvarez said, producing a neat stack of paper that had waited its whole life to be used. "Thomas Rinaldi, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and unlawful surveillance." Rinaldi's mouth flattened. He glanced at Sarah, curious, not cruel. "Was it the paper that beat me?" he asked her. "It's always the paper." "It was my mother," Sarah said, voice steady. "She left a truth you forgot to see." Julian's eyes flicked to her. Shame did a small unpretty thing to his face. "I just install speakers," he muttered. "And kitchens. Isabella said, and cameras aimed at women who didn't invite you. Alvarez's second officer cuffed Rinaldi. The audience murmured, a ripple of human noise that felt like weather about to break. On stage, the ballerina took her partner's hand and kept going, because artists know how to continue through ridiculousness. "Where's Carmine?" Sarah asked. "Here," came a voice from the aisle. Carmine Valenti stepped into view like a man entering his own reception. White jacket, crimson square. The self-satisfaction of someone who has never had to be late for anyone. "Wouldn't miss this," he said as security froze at the edges of the room. "Thomas bores me when he loses." Alvarez lifted his chin. "You're welcome to join him." Carmine smiled as if he'd been complimented. "Detective, you brought wood-paneled paper to a knife fight. This city prefers steel." "Tonight it prefers evidence," Giovanni said. Carmine's gaze touched Sarah like a cold hand pressed against glass. "The conservator," he said. "You look like your mother." "Don't," Giovanni said, soft enough to carry. Carmine's smile thinned. "You keep breaking the rules, Rossi. You make love a security policy." He nodded toward the pit. "Careful with that. Love bleeds louder than any king." "Then listen close," Giovanni said, "because mine is speaking." He stepped forward, and the entire house seemed to lean. No threats, no raised voice, only a list of facts, laid like cards, face up. "You swapped originals for copies through your broker and your installer. You seeded gossip with my woman's mother's name to discredit her. You planted a relay in my home and called it a speaker. You sent boys without firing pins so you could feel tall. You cracked my glass to write your name on my night." He took one more step. The space between them was a line on a map. "You are a small man in a big suit, Carmine, and tonight you are done." Alvarez held up his phone. "Search warrants executed at Marino's studio at 7:42 p.m. Multiple drives seized. Audio, contracts, a ledger that matches a page the decedent Laura Bennett wrote, sealed years ago and introduced by a lawful heir. This isn't theater." Carmine's jaw clicked once. "You think men like me go to prison?" "I think men like you go quiet when the money dries," Giovanni said. "And I think yours just did." He angled his head. Luca, at the back of the house, lifted his hand once. Bankers answered to gravity and panic. Valenti's accounts had begun to shiver an hour ago. The final freeze hit while Act 1 danced. Carmine's smile cracked, then returned in smaller pieces. "You can't hold all the doors at once," he said. "Watch me," Giovanni answered. Rinaldi was already moving down the aisle between two officers. Julian sagged as Isabella handed him to another pair. The man with the knife was awake enough to be ashamed. Carmine took a breath that thought about running. He didn't. He lifted his hands like a man who knows how to survive a season. "I'll give you your second act," he said to Sarah, bitterness under velvet. "He'll bleed. They always do." "He already did," Sarah said. "He bled and stayed." Silence held for one clean second. Then Alvarez nodded. Two more officers stepped in, not apologetic, not theatrical. They surrounded Carmine without touching him and escorted him to the end of the row, where the aisle waited like a narrow future. As they passed, Carmine leaned just enough to aim one last line at Giovanni. "The inside door," he said softly. "Find it." Giovanni didn't answer. He was already turning, not to the aisle, not to the stage, but to Sarah. The orchestra swelled as if the room understood what needed to happen next. "Come here," he said. She did. The audience watched as if they'd been sold tickets to this exact moment. Giovanni took Sarah's right hand in his left, set his other hand at the safe place at her back, and guided her in a slow, private waltz in the shadow of the balcony railing, while below, the actual ballet continued. No performance, no pose, just two people using music to make gravity behave. "You are not collateral," he said low. "I know," she said. "I'm a choice." "My best one," he answered. She laughed without meaning to. The sound shook and then steadied. "You didn't answer me the first time I asked." "At Aurelio's?" he said. "You asked for a dance. After, in your hall. Am I yours?" He held her gaze, and the truth in his eyes wasn't a weapon, It was shelter. Yes, he said, and I am yours. The music climbed a stair and opened a door. He kissed her then. No hiding, no darkness. A clean, certain kiss that ended a war you couldn't see and started a life you could. Applause rose from the orchestra level, braided with the real applause from the stage. In a city that had cheered worse things, this felt like a small, good correction. Time to go, Isabella murmured, practical as always. Before the cameras learn how to ask better questions. They left into winter air that bit like honesty. Outside, police lights pulsed like heartbeat. Alvarez caught up at the curb, hands in his pockets, relief on his face that he didn't quite mask. We'll need statements, he said, but not tonight. Tomorrow, Giovanni said. Alvarez nodded at Sarah. Your mother would have liked you. She taught me to put things back the way they're meant to be, Sarah said. He smiled, real and tired, and walked away. The car door opened. Giovanni didn't usher her in. He stood with her for a moment, both of them looking at the theater like a place they would never be afraid of again. Home? He asked. Home, she said, and meant a building and a room and a person. They rode in a quiet, edged with relief. Snow began that particular Chicago way, first a rumor, then a decision. Giovanni's phone buzzed once. Ethan, inside door found. Doorman took a bribe to look left at 211. He's already confessing. No family, just rent due. Giovanni's mouth tightened. Compassion and consequence sharing a chair. Make sure he eats before he signs. He texted. Then make sure he never touches a door again. The car slid into the garage. The elevator rose. The penthouse exhaled when they stepped in. The temporary film on the cracked window had been replaced by new glass. The city beyond it glittered clean, as if something old had finally burned off. Luca was at the island with a triumphant grin and 2 glasses. Valenti tried to call a judge, he reported cheerfully. The judge was in our box. Careful, Isabella said, plucking a speck of lint from her sleeve. You'll start believing in happy endings. I already do, Luca said, tipping his glass toward Sarah. They just take work. Sarah drifted to the library. The honeysuckle watercolor waited under gentle lights, its sky the exact color she'd coaxed back. Regina had left a note on the frame in her precise hand. Original reinstalled. Copy impounded. Paper remembers. Giovanni came to stand beside her. We'll return the painting to where it belongs, he said. But until then, it can live here. It already does, she said. He turned her toward him. No audience now, no enemies. Just 2 people who had survived the second act and had a third to write that didn't require blood. I don't know what language to use for this that isn't a contract, he said, attempting a smile. Try plain, she said. Plain, he repeated, and the words softened his face. Stay. Not because you're scared, because you're sure. I am sure, she said. Of you. Of me with you. Of the way the world looks when we're on the same side. He breathed out like a man setting down weight. Then stay. She did. And later, when the house was quiet and the city sounded like a far river, he told her the pieces he hadn't said out loud, how he learned his rules, where the scar on his shoulder came from, what it cost to be both feared and decent. She told him about a girl who learned to see color where other people only saw damage, about a mother who wrote truth on paper and hid it like a seed. In the morning, sunlight found them. Coffee steamed. The world politely kept moving. Headlines would argue, lawyers would posture, money would try to remember how to be power without being cruel. Those were tomorrows. Today had simpler work, returning the lily to a vase, calling Aunt Karen with thanks, letting Alvarez ram his shoulder into the right doors until they opened. At the window, Sarah traced one finger on the new glass. It's strange, she said, how a city can feel different overnight. It's not the city, Giovanni said, slipping an arm around her waist. It's the house. And us in it, she added. And us in it, he agreed. She tilted her face up. Will you dance with me? He smiled, the most dangerous smile of all, the one that meant he had nothing left to hide. Always, he said. They danced in morning light without music, the way people do when the rhythm they need is already living under their ribs. Outside, snow fell soft as an apology. Inside, the blank frame on the wall wasn't blank anymore. Someone had slipped a photograph into it. Two figures on a balcony, mid-turn. The world blurred around them. The caption in Luca's hurried block letters. The night they chose each other. There would be other tests. There always are. But they had a language now that didn't rely on fear. It sounded like yes when you could say no, like I'm here when you could leave, like steady in a room built to make you spin. In a city of contracts and consequences, they wrote a different kind of deal. They kept it. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.